Hello students, welcome to Legacy IS Academy. In today's video, we are going to discuss about the major physiographical regions, physical features of the smallest continent of the world, that is Australia. And also we are going to talk in brief about the islands surrounding Australia, and the island groups along with Australia and the landmass of New Zealand are collectively called as Oceania. So let's try to understand about Oceania first. So Oceania, as we have discussed, is a region in the Pacific Ocean, more precisely South Pacific Ocean, made up of thousands of islands scattered across the central and the southern part of the Pacific. It includes Australia, which is the smallest continent in the terms of land area. Most of Australia and Oceania is under the Pacific, a vast body of water that is larger than all the Earth's continental land masses and islands combined. Basically, the name Oceania justly establishes the Pacific Ocean as the defining characteristic of this particular continent. If you take a look at the map of this particular region, we can see this is our Pacific Ocean. Here we have Australia, which is the largest landmass. Then we have New Zealand, slightly to the east of New Zealand, Australia. We have also a very small island that is called as Tasmania. Tasmania, coincidentally, is also referred as the kitchen garden of Australia because it is well known for its huge area that is cultivable and used for cultivation of fruits, vegetables, dairy products, and all these. And then it is sent via ship every day to the Australian mainland. And thus, Australia, New Zealand, then we have Tasmania, and then a lot of islands, the largest one of them being Papua New Guinea, and Solomon Islands, Fiji, Tuvalu, Samoa. These islands collectively come under the grouping of three groups that is called as Micronesia, Melanesia, and Polynesia. Overall, if geographically we try to divide Oceania, we can divide into three different regions. One, we can call it as the continental islands, such as Australia and New Zealand. Second is high islands, that refer to those areas which are generally volcanic in nature. And then low island, which basically are a type of coral reefs or atoll. So if we talk about the continental island, they were basically once attached to the continents before sea level varied, changed, and then a large part of this island became submerged under the risen sea level. And also because of tectonic activity, plate tectonics, it has isolated this island. Example is Australia, Zealandia, of which New Zealand is a part, and large part of Zealandia is submerged underwater. And then you have the New Guinea that we have just discussed in the last map. Then apart from this, since these all are continental island, a common characteristic which we find in all these islands are that these have a mountain ranges or at least a highland kind of area. For example, the Great Dividing Range in Australia, the North Island Volcanic Plateau and Southern Alps in New Zealand, and the New Guinea Highland in the country of Papua New Guinea. Basically, these highlands are nothing but a type of fold mountain that is formed due to the tectonic plate movement. Basically, what happens when two tectonic plates compress each other, collide with each other, the sediments, the rocks that are present at the boundary zone, basically they rise in the upward direction, which is called as upfolding. And as these upfolded rocks finally attain their characteristic feature, it is called as the fold mountain. The best example of that we see in India is the Himalayas. Similarly, New Zealand and Papua New Guinea also have a lot of volcanic feature because of the tectonic activity. Basically, when the oceanic plate and two oceanic plates are converging together, colliding together, or if one oceanic plate is converging below the continental plate, in that case, the magma forms due to the melting of oceanic plate and that rises in the form of volcanic eruption. Now, obviously, Australia is on the most significant part of the Oceania. So, Australia is also we can say officially is referred as Commonwealth of Australia, smallest continent and the sixth largest country in terms of area on Earth, lying between two oceans, Pacific in the east and the Indian Ocean in the west. Area-wise, area is about this much, and population as per the 2023 figure, as we can see, is about 26 million. Basically, it is an island nation that comprises Australian continent as well as the islands of Tasmania and some other smaller islands. It is a developed nation, has the world's 12th largest economy and 6th highest per capita income. Mainly, Australia is well known for its high life expectancy, good quality of education, a better quality of life, biodiversity, and tourism. And not all that, from India's perspective, we can see a lot of students for their master's degree, they visit Australia, they go to Australia. A lot of working professionals, they try to go to Australia. And thus, Australia has a very well developed diaspora from Indian subcontinent or South Asia more precisely. So if you look at the geological history of Australia, we can see that once it was part of a southern landmass which is called as Gondwana land, and the Australian landmass was attached to the Indian landmass, as you can see from this picture here. And gradually what happened? Gradually the India separated from Australia and it drifted toward north where it collided with Eurasia to form the highest mountain system of the world, that is Himalayas, and Australia kept on moving toward east. And then today we have a long distance between India and Australia. This vast stretch is separated by a water body that we know well as the Indian Ocean. So, what is the physical characteristic or physical divisions of Australia? Now, if you look at Australia from west to east, it can be simply divided into three regions. The western region, which is a highly elevated region, which is called as Western Plateau, clearly seen from this picture here. The central area, which is a lowland area, low-lying area, that is called as central lowland. And again, we have a highland area on the eastern coast of Australia, which is also a kind of mountain-like system or a mountain called as Great Dividing Range. So basically, we have two highland areas on two sides of Australia, and the central region is the low-lying region. So let us try to discuss about each of these regions one by one. So first of all, if you talk about the Western Plateau, it is the Australia's largest drainage basin and is composed predominantly of the remains of ancient rock sealed of Gondwana. As we have just discussed, that this western part of Australia was basically connected with the Gondwana land, and to be more precise, it was connected with the Indian landmass. It is believed that if you look at the city of Perth, that is situated here in the western coast, and you have Shillong in Meghalaya. So basically, Shillong and Meghalaya and Perth were so close to each other, that means you could have thrown a rock from Shillong and it would have landed in the city of Perth, Australia, which is currently divided by thousands and thousands of kilometers today. So basically, it covers two-thirds of the continent. It is the largest region, covering almost 1 million square kilometers of arid land, including large part of Western Australia, South Australia, and the Northern Territory. Basically, if you look at this, we have large number of deserts also you'll find in this area, because the wind is not able to move in this direction because of the presence of the highland barrier, and thus you have Great Sandy Desert, Robinson, Great Victoria Deserts, we have Gibson Desert along the Robinson Ranges, Kimberley Plateau, and all these kind of regions. Then after Western Highland, Western Plateau, as we move more toward east, as you can see from this diagram, we have a central lowland area. It is a great stretch stretching all the way from the north of Australia to the south of Australia, low-lying areas between the Western Plateau and the Eastern Highland. Average elevation is just 150 meters. And in the central part of central lowland, you have a large lake called as Lake Eyre, which is just 12 meter below the sea level, and it is a region of inland drainage. Inland drainage means that a lot of rivers are basically originating from this eastern highland, and then they are depositing and collecting their water in the lake region of the central lowland. That is the example of inland drainage. When the river water does not flow out into the sea, rather it disappears into the land part itself, that is called as inland drainage. We talk about two major rivers of Australia. We have the Murray River and the Darling Rivers, which flow through the southern part of central lowland, owing to the scanty rainfall, because again, this part of Australia is basically sandwiched between two higher regions, and the winds are not able to bring clouds in the central lowland region, causing a scanty rainfall, and thus much of the lowland is dry. However, the people who are living there, they are fortunate enough because water is obtained from what is called as artesian wells. These wells are dug deep into the earth, and water from these wells flow continuously. Now, artesian well in Australia, we have what we call as the Great Artesian Basin, which is the largest artesian basin in the entire world. Artesian basin I talk about, as you can see, this is the part of the central lowland where we have artesian basin, and here we have two major rivers as we discussed, Murray River and Darling River, and then they go out toward the Great Artesian Basin, and here we have the Lake Eyre. So basically, apart from that, one very distinguishing landform in this part of the Australia to the west of central lowland is what is called as Ayers Rock. Ayers Rock is also known popularly by the name of Uluru Rocks. Uluru Rocks was the earlier name, Ayers Rock was the colonial name. So Ayers Rock is basically an example of what we refer in geography as monadnock. It is one of the largest standing monadnock of the world. It basically refers to a large rock or a hill-like feature that is actually surrounded by a vast plain, low-lying plain. So this is the Ayers Rock. We can see that entire area around this Ayers Rock is a flat land, and this we have a sudden rise of this hill-like feature. This happens basically because the entire landmass around this region were made up of soft rocks which had been eroded continuously due to the flow of the wind and the water. But this rock is made up of harder materials, harder rocks, and that is why they have not been eroded to such an extent. And that is why they feel like standing suddenly from the nearby low-lying flat plain, which is an example of monadnocks. So if we talk about the artesian wells, basically it refers to such kind of system where inside the earth's surface or below the earth's surface we have the large volume of water that is trapped between two impervious strata. And due to this, what happens? Since water cannot flow, a high extent of or high amount of pressure is exerted in this water. And suppose if you drill a hole and actually try to drill a well into this water body, what will happen? Under this high pressure, the water will flow automatically through this well. You do not have to use pumps or borings. Basically, you do not have to use submersible pumps to extract water here. Under the natural high pressure, the water will start to flow automatically from this well. And this shaded region, this part of the Australian map, basically refers to the Great Artesian Basin, which covers the area of almost 660,000 square miles, which is the largest artesian basin of the entire world. Now, coming to the third part of the Australia, which is the Eastern Highland, it lies parallel, obviously, to the coast of Australia, the eastern coast of Australia, and some of the peaks in this region are covered by snow in winter. Example, the largest mountain range here we have is the East Australian Highland, also called as Great Dividing Range. And then in the southern part, you have the Victorian Highlands, also called as Australian Alps. Off the northeast coast of Australia extend a long ridge-like feature around this part, which is called as Great Barrier Reef. The Great Barrier Reef has formed as a result of the deposition of rock-like skeletons of tiny sea animals that is called as corals living in large colonies. If you look at this map here, it will be clearly visible to you. This red area refers to the Great Barrier Reef, which extends to almost 1,200 miles along the northeastern coast of Australia through the province of Queensland. Apart from that, we talk about the capital of Australia, which is Canberra. It is also situated in this particular part of the upland, that is Eastern Upland. And then we have Australian Alps in the south and Great Dividing Range in the northern and eastern side, from where we have two major rivers, the Darling River and Murray River originate and then goes in the downward direction. Also, if you talk about the highest peak of Australia, it is Mount Kosciuszko, which is situated in the Australian Alps. It is not very high. It is mere 2,228 meters, but still it is covered by snow and ice, as you can see from here, because obviously this part of Australia is lying more in the higher latitude, somewhere about 40 degree, 35 degree to 40 degree latitude. That is a temperate latitude. Apart from the continental island, if we talk about the second type of island which we have, which is a part of Oceania, are referred as high island. High island basically has formed due to the oceanic convergence. We have the Pacific plate on one side, which is colliding with the Indian plate or Australian plate on the other side. And due to this convergence, we have the eruption of volcanic eruption that has caused deposition of large volume of rocks from the seabed and which has risen above sea level to form volcanic island chain. The volcanic island chain is part of what we call generally as Polynesia. So basically, if you talk about in the Melanesia example of the volcanic island chain, and you can see we have New Guinea, then we have the Solomon Islands. These are the major islands of this particular region, which is a type of volcanic island. Recently, we have the eruption of volcano in a small island in the same region that is called as Tonga Island. The third group of island is what we can call as low-lying islands, which basically is part of Micronesia and Polynesia, where we islands such as Guam, which was a well-known island during where the war was fought during the World War II between Japan and USA. We have Marshall Islands, then we have Cook Island, Pitcairn, Tuvalu, Samoa, Tonga, as we have just discussed. So these islands basically has formed mainly due to the coral activity, the coral deposition of the marine organisms that is called as corals. So their outer skeleton is made up of calcium carbonate, and when they deposit their shell, it lead to formation of coral islands. That is what this group of islands is. So that is all about the important facts about Oceania and Australia. I hope you understood the video. Like the video, please hit the like button. Share it with the fellow aspirants and subscribe to our channel for more such content. Thank you very much.